The winter ferry waits in Hirtshals with a line of warm windows resting on the dark water. Your cabin is already prepared, somewhere inside the ship, behind a quieter door and a round window turned toward the North Atlantic. The quiet part of the night has opened at last, the part that asks nothing from you. I am the night keeper. Tonight, the key fits a cabin door on the winter ferry, and the crossing will keep its lamps low. In my hand is a soft brass key on a worn leather cord. It is not sharp or bright. It has the mild shine of an object touched often, carried carefully, and used only for places already ready for rest. The harbor around you is calm. The ferry never looms. It waits, large and steady, with its ramp lowered and its decks glowing in long amber lines. The terminal behind you has glass walls, clean benches, and a few dim reflections of coats, bags, and winter air. Outside, the cold is only a thin feeling at the edge of your face. Inside the ferry, warmth gathers in corridors, cabins, folded blankets, and cups set upside down for later. You do not need the whole route tonight, just the first easy step. The ferry waits, the cabin waits, the cord rests quietly against my palm, and the dark water at Hirtshals moves in small, patient folds below the ship. The covered gangway rises with a very gentle slope. Underfoot, the floor is not bare metal. A muted runner takes the sound from each step and gives back almost nothing. Along both sides, handrails hold a quiet warmth from the ferry air. The glass panels above them show the harbor in softened pieces. One lamp, one reflection, one small curl of water, one pale winter cloud moving over the terminal roof. You walk without measuring the distance. The gangway is a simple passage from outside to inside, from open water to warm rooms, from departure to settling, blend. Behind you, Hirtshals becomes smaller without vanishing. It remains a safe harbor, but nothing from anyone. A place of lamps and low buildings, a place that has done its part by bringing the ferry to the pier. Ahead, the ferry doorway is open. Nothing around it hurries. A soft strip of light lies across the threshold. The air changes before you cross it, gaining the faint scent of clean carpet, varnished wood, warm fabric, and the mild hum that belongs to a ship already keeping itself steady. You may pause on the gangway for one breath. The harbor lamps do not flicker. The rail does not chill your hand. The ship does not call or insist. It offers the next warm place. So the cross begins as gently as a door opening in a quiet house, with the sea outside and the cabin somewhere inside, waiting with its lamp turned low. The ferry receives you in a small entry space where every sound seems to have rounded edges. There are floor mats, the color of slate wool, a polished panel of wood along one wall, and ceiling lights softened behind warm covers. A desk stands nearby, but it is quiet now. No line gathers there, and no voice asks anything from the night. A stack of folded papers rests under a small lamp, and a pen lies across them, as if even writing has been set down until morning. The ferry's hum is not loud. It is more like a deep thread beneath everything, a low, even note from a ship, awake enough to carry you, and quiet enough not to disturb you. Along the wall, a narrow sign points toward cabins, though the letters can stay unread. The corridor itself is clear, with door lamps making a soft path. The carpet turns the footfall into a hush. The walls curve just enough to remind you that this is a ship. not a hotel, and that all these warm rooms are moving together through the winter night. You follow the corridor slowly. A brass rail runs along one side, smooth under the hand. The sea stays low and kind. The first few cabin doors pass by in quiet order, each one with a small number, each one holding its own lamp, curtain, bed, and folded towel. Farther along, the small brass shape rests on its leather cord, ready for the door that has been waiting for you. Your cabin door is near the middle of the corridor. It is painted a quiet blue-gray, the color of a winter sky after daylight has gone. A small amber lamp glows above it. The handle is rounded and plain. Beside it, the lock waits without secrecy, only privacy, the good kind that lets a room hold its own little weather. The corridor behind you is still. Far away, perhaps around a bend, a door settles softly into its frame. Then even that small sound is taken into the ferry's hum and smoothed away. The brass turns in the lock with a soft, exact click. Nothing dramatic happens. The door knows it may open. A line of warm cabin light appears at the edge, then widens slowly across the carpet. The air from inside carries linen, a clean wool blanket, and a trace of metal warmed by the bedside lamp. Beyond the door is the room promised by the harbor windows. Small, private, and already arranged for sleep. You step in, the door closes quietly behind you. Outside it, the corridor continues on its low amber path. Inside it, the crossing becomes small enough to hold a bed, a lamp, a round window, a folded blanket, a nightstand, a curtain, partly drawn. The ferry may be large, the water may be wide, and the North Atlantic may go on for a long time beyond the hull. But the cabin has gathered the journey into a room that asks for no effort. The bed is made in the practical, careful way of a small ship cabin. The sheet is smooth, but not stiff. The pillow has a shallow dip in its center, as if it already knows where a head may rest. At the foot of the bed lies a folded wool blanket, gray, with a faint green thread running through it. The blanket is not decoration. Night crossings are kinder when warmth is within reach. A low lamp sits on the narrow table beside the bed. Its shade is cream-colored and slightly textured, softening the light into a circle just large enough for the pillow, the edge of the blanket, and a cup turned upside down on a little tray. Above the bed, a small shelf has a raised lip, so nothing slides when the ferry breathes with the water. On the shelf is a folded cloth, a simple paper ticket, and a pencil laid parallel to the wall. The objects are plain, and the plainness is restful. The round window is covered by a curtain, but a thread of blue leaks around the edge. It is the color of harbor night, soon to become open sea night, and later the misted blue of the islands ahead. For now, the bed is the center. The blanket makes another. The lamp makes a third. You can let the room arrange itself around these simple things. Bed, blanket, lamp, window, the ferry hum beneath them, the corridor beyond the door, the harbor slowly preparing to fall behind. The round window is cool near the rim and softly blue at the center. When the curtain is drawn aside, Hirtshals appears in a quiet circle. The terminal lights are no longer sharp. They have become small amber beads on the glass, some real, some reflected from the cabin lamp behind you. The harbor water below them folds the lights into longer shapes and lets them go. A ferry window is different from an ordinary window. It never asks the room to take in too much. It gives only what fits inside its rim, and that is enough. One piece of harbor, one piece of night, one low cloud, one slow movement of water beside the ship. You may stand there without searching for more. The glass keeps the cold outside. The glass keeps the cold outside. The lamp keeps the room warm. The blanket keeps its folded shape on the bed. Somewhere below, a siren, a soft mechanical note changes and settles again. The ferry is preparing, but the room is not disturbed. The movement is distant, practical, and calm, like a house adjusting its heat before everyone sleeps. The shore remains nearby, while the cabin has already become its own place. If you look at the window, the harbor is there. If you turn from it, the bed is there. If your attention drifts between them, the room holds both. The outside water and the inside warmth, the ferry's long crossing, and the small circle of light beside the pillow. Soon the ship will move. For now, it waits with you, steady, in the winter harbor. The departure is so gradual that the room seems to notice it before the body does. The harbor lights begin to shift in the round window, not away all at once, but sideways, bead by bead. A dark strip of water opens between the ferry and the pier. The terminal glass slides behind the window frame. A green harbor light becomes a soft dot, then a smaller dot, then a memory of green in the blue. Inside the cabin, nothing needs to change. The lamp remains low, the blanket remains folded, the cup remains upside down on its tray. Only the window tells the story of leaving, and it tells it quietly. The ferry's hum deepens a little, then steadies. A faint shiver passes through the floor, more comforting than noticeable, like something heavy beginning a slow, careful roll. The water against the hull makes a muffled brushing sound. It does not slap or rise. It only touches the ship and falls back. Hirtshals moves into the distance with all its lamps intact. The harbor is not lost. It has simply moved behind the crossing now. Ahead is the long winter sea, but the sea enters the cabin only as blue through glass and low sound through the walls. The room does not become larger because the water is large. It remains small, prepared, and warm. You may sit on the edge of the bed. You may let the ferry carry the motion. Nothing needs steering, remembering, or solving. The shore softens. The window darkens. The cabin begins its quiet work. After departure, the corridor feels even softer. The ferry has left the harbor, and even the doors seem to know it. Each cabin door holds its own small lamp. Each lamp a warm oval above a handle, each handle catching a faint line of brass light. The carpet is patterned with muted blue and grey waves, but the pattern is so low it becomes almost a texture rather than a design. You step out only for a short walk. The cabin door closes gently behind you, and the corridor receives you with the same steady hum that runs through the walls. No bright announcements come through. No sudden voices. Just ventilation moving warm air, the distant hush of water, and the small settling clicks of a ship beginning its long night. A handrail follows the corridor at waist height. It is smooth and practical, made for comfort more than display. You let your fingers pass over it lightly as you walk. Door, lamp, cart, pet, rail, turn, soft wall. The pattern repeats without becoming a task. A tiny alcove holds a vase with dried seagrass, a folded notice too small to read, and a bench built into the wall. The bench is empty. Its cushion is firm and clean. Above it, another lamp glows through frosted glass. The ferry is moving, but the corridor is not busy. It is a hallway of sleeping rooms being carried across water. You follow it just far enough for the cabin to feel even kinder when you return. A short stair turns upward from the corridor. The steps are carpeted in the same muted pattern as the hall, and each stair edge has a narrow band of worn brass, dulled by many careful crossings. The rail curves with the wall. It feels neither cold nor polished for show, only dependable beneath the hand. Halfway up, there is a small landing with a glass case set into the wall. Inside the case is a simple model of a ferry, painted white and blue, with tiny rows of windows. It is not presented as grand. It is just there, a quiet reminder that ships are made of rooms, decks, doors, rails, lamps, and people who prepare them. The model catches a little amber light from the stair lamp. You do not need to study it. You can let it stay small. At the top of the stair, another corridor waits, wider than the one below. It leads toward the public rooms, where the ferry keeps its soft nighttime spaces. A lounge with deep chairs, a cafeteria with stacked cups, perhaps a windowed corner where the sea can be watched without going outside. There is no reason to rush there. The stair itself is already restful enough. Step, rail, landing, lamp, the ferry's low hum climbing through the walls, water far below, brushing the hull in its own unhurried rhythm. When you reach the top, the air seems a little wider, and the ship opens another quiet room for the night. The lounge is almost empty, and that is part of its kindness. Deep chairs are arranged near the windows, in loose pairs, not close enough to ask for conversation. Their fabric is a muted blue-green, softened by lamplight and years of careful cleaning. Small tables sit between them, each table holding a round lamp, a folded napkin, and nothing else. The windows are tall and dark. Outside, the North Atlantic is not asking to be understood. It is only a deep blue surface, moving under a deeper blue sky. Sometimes, the cabin lights reflect on the glass and make the room appear twice. One lounge inside, and one dimmer lounge floating over the water. You choose a chair near the middle window. It receives you without sinking too far. The armrests are broad enough for resting hands. The lamp beside you has a shade like warm paper, though there is no paper glare, only a mild amber pool on the tabletop. Across the room, a shelf holds a few board games with plain boxes, a row of old magazines, and a basket of folded blankets. None of it asks to be used. It only says the room has thought ahead. The ferry moves beneath the chair. Not much. Just enough to give the body a slow reminder that it is being carried. The harbor is behind you. The islands are far ahead. Between them, this lounge keeps its lamps low, its chairs open, and its windows full of dark, breathing water. The cafeteria is closed for the night, but it is not dark. A few lights remain above the serving counter, turned low enough that the metal surfaces look soft rather than bright. The trays are stacked at one end. The glass sneeze guard reflects a line of amber dots from the ceiling. Behind it, everything is clean, still, and ready for morning, without mentioning morning too loudly. On a side counter, Cups are stacked in careful columns, white cups, blue cups, small brown cups for strong coffee that no one needs right now. Beside them are spoons laid in a shallow wooden tray and a quiet machine with its light off. A bowl of wrapped tea bags sits near a kettle, and beside the kettle is a handwritten label too small to read from where you stand. It does not matter. The idea of warm water is already enough. You take one of the white cups only if you like. Is a light. The cup is light, plain, and clean. Steam rises slowly when warm water is poured. It curls once above the rim, then loosens into the cafeteria air. The smell is mild, perhaps chamomile, perhaps only warm porcelain and the memory of tea. At the far end of the room, the windows show nothing sharp, just darkness. A faint line of reflected lamps and the occasional pale brush of water below. A cafeteria can feel busy in daylight. At night, on a winter ferry, it becomes another kind of room. Useful, dim, prepared, and quiet enough for a cup to cool at its own pace. Near the cafeteria, a door leads to a sheltered deck. You do not have to go through. The inside space before the door is enough. A little vestibule with rubber matting, 3 empty hooks, a bench fixed to the wall, and a round window looking out to the side of the ship. The window is misted at the edge, clear in the center, and blue all the way through. The handle on the outer door is still. No wind presses at it. No weather asks for attention. Beyond it, the cold dark stays at a respectful distance, held back by glass, seal, and warm ferry wall. You stand in the vestibule for a moment. The floor is steady. The bench is narrow but kind. A folded mat leans in the corner, ready for wet boots that are not needed tonight. The hooks cast small curved shadows on the wall. Through the round window, the sea moves beside the ship in quiet streaks. It is close, but not intrusive. The ferry makes a sheltered edge around it, a way to see night water without entering its cold. A soft vibration travels through the doorframe, and a sip disappears. The ship continues. The corridor behind you remains warm. The cafeteria keeps its stacked cups. The lounge keeps its deep chairs. The cabin waits below with its bed and low lamp. You can leave the deck door closed. You can leave the deck door closed. It is restful to know the outside is there, and just as restful to let the inside hold you. If you step onto the covered deck, it is only for a small walk. The roof above the walkway keeps the night light and close. The rail is high, solid, and beaded with tiny drops that catch the ship's lamps. A warm strip of light runs along the wall near your shoulder, guiding the way without brightening the sea too much. The air is cold, but mild in the shelter. It smells of salt, painted metal, and winter mist. The ferry moves through darkness with the patience of something that knows its route. Below, water folds away from the hull in soft, grey-blue lines. There is no need to look far. The view stays simple. Rail, water, light, mist, the black-blue sky, and the pale edge of the ferry's side continuing ahead. Your hand stays near the rail. The deck is dry where the roof covers it. A small drain glints near the wall. A coil of rope is tucked neatly behind a low barrier. Everything outside has a place, just as everything inside has a place. Cup, blanket, lamp, pillow, key, curtain, rail. After a few steps, the covered deck turns back toward an inner door. The warm corridor is visible through its window. That is enough. You do not need a long outdoor walk tonight. Just this brief proofy that the ferry is moving through winter air while the rooms within remain kind. You return through the door, bringing in only a cool touch on your cheeks and the quiet smell of the sea. The way back to the cabin is familiar now. The corridor does not feel like a passage on a map. It feels like part of a small nighttime rhythm. Lounge, stair, corridor, door lamp, cabin. The carpet quiets the steps again. The handrail keeps its mild warmth. The doors sleep in their frames. When your cabin lamp appears above the blue-grey door, the room seems to have been keeping time without needing a clock. Inside, the bed is unchanged. The blanket is still folded at the foot. The low lamp is still the size of a warm circle. The round window is darker now. Hirtshals has fallen away behind the ferry, and the glass holds open sea. Not dramatic sea, not story sea, just deep winter water, softened by distance and the lamp's reflection. You may set the cup from the cafeteria on the nightstand if you brought it with you, or you may leave both hands empty. The room does not mind either way. A tiny sound comes from the shelf as the ferry shifts very gently, and the pencil there rolls no farther than the raised lip allows. It rests again. So does everything else. You draw the curtain halfway. This leaves a crescent of blue at the edge of the window. This size of the window, just enough for the mind to remember the crossing without needing to watch it. The cabin has become the center again. Outside, the ferry carries many rooms. Inside, this one room carries the night in a lamp, a bed, a blanket, and a quiet circle of glass. The first night on the ferry settles in layers. First comes the lamp, warm and low, then the blanket, unfolded now and resting across the bed with a soft, even weight, then the hum of the ship, so steady that after a while, it no longer seems separate from the room. It becomes part of the pillow, part of the walls, part of the walls, part of the air between the lamp and the window. You do not need to sleep yet. You do not need to stay awake. The crossing makes room for both. The ferry moves through the North Atlantic with a calm persistence, and the cabin reduces the journey to small sensations. Cotton sheet, wool edge, warm lamp, dark window, breath of ventilation, barely felt motion under the floor. The cup on the tray gives off its last warmth. The curtain moves once, although there is no wind inside the room. It is only the ferry's air system, sending a soft current along the wall. No one knocks, no bell sounds. No announcement enters the cabin. No announcement enters the cabin. The ship knows how to travel without asking you to listen. You can lie back if you like. The pillow is cool at first, then slowly warmer. The blanket gathers around your feet. The round window keeps its narrow, blue crescent. Somewhere far below, water moves along the hull with a sound like cloth drawn slowly through a hand. First night, ferry cabin, lamp low, harbour behind, islands ahead, and all of it held gently enough to become sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, the cabin becomes quieter than before. The ferry is still moving. The water is still touching the hull. The lamp is still low, yet the room has crossed into a deeper hour when objects seem to rest more completely in their places. On the nightstand, the brass key lies beside the cup, its worn leather cord making a loose curve on the wood. It does not need to open anything now. The door is closed. The room is yours. It has become only a small warm shape in the lamp's circle. A reminder that every restful place has a threshold, and every threshold can be crossed softly. And the paper ticket under the lamp has curled slightly at one corner. The pencil remains on the shelf. The blanket has lost its exact fold and taken the gentler shape of use. The cup is empty, or nearly empty, and a ring of pale warmth remains where it stood. Beyond the curtain, the North Atlantic continues in darkness. Inside, the cabin keeps reducing the world, not because the world is gone, because sleep asks for fewer edges, a table, a threshold, a cup, a lamp, a bed, a window nearly covered. The ferry's hum going on under everything, patient and even. You do not have to remember this hour for it to hold you. It can pass over you like warm shadow, while the ship carries the room onward through the quiet sea. After midnight, the ferry's hum becomes less like a sound and more like a place. It is under the mattress and inside the walls. It is in the little metal latch of the drawer, in the edge of the window, in the shelf lip that holds the pencil still. It is not loud enough to follow, only steady enough to trust. Steady enough to trust. The body can let it be the rhythm now. No counting, no measuring, just the long, low note of a ship doing its work. In the half-sleep of the cabin, the room may simplify. The lamp may become a warm dot. The window may become a blue coin. The blanket may become a field of wool. Quiet and grey-green, with one thread of sea colour running through it. The corridor outside is far away. The lounge is farther. The harbour is farther still. Torshavn is not yet near enough to ask for shape. So, the crossing rests in the middle, where nothing has to begin or end. This may be the kindest part of a long night journey. The place between places, where the mind can stop arranging the world into errands, arrivals, and names. The ferry keeps moving. The cabin keeps stillness. Both remain true. Water moves, blanket rests, hull hums, lamp glows, window darkens, and somewhere in that soft balance, the first night becomes deep enough that even the idea of the route grows quiet. Before morning, there is a blue line at the edge of the curtain. It is not daylight yet. It is only sea and sky becoming slightly different from one another. The round window, half covered through the night, now holds a pale seam where dark water meets dark air. The seam is soft, almost imagined, and it drifts slowly behind the glass as the ferry continues northward. The cabin is very quiet. The lamp may still be on, turned low enough that the blue outside begins to share the room. Amber and blue meet on the blanket. The cup on the nightstand looks cooler now. The raised shelf casts a small shadow that was not there in the deepest part of the night. Nothing asks you to rise. This is not a morning of schedules. Only the crossing, changing color. And you may remain under the blanket and let the window do the looking for you. The ship carries you through the slow hour when night becomes less solid. Somewhere on another deck, a light may brighten above the cafeteria. Somewhere in a corridor, warm air moves through a vent. Somewhere far forward, the ferry opens water ahead of itself, in quiet folds. Inside the room, the bed keeps its warmth. The pillow keeps the shape it has been given. The blanket holds the body's heat. The blue line grows slightly clearer. Then, softer, again as mist gathers over the water. Morning does not arrive all at once. On this ferry, it comes as a dim blue permission to keep resting. The sea day arrives without brightness. It comes in grey-blue light, in a wider circle at the window, in the soft visibility of the blanket's weave, and the small scratches on the nightstand. The ferry is far from the harbour now, but the cabin does not feel far from anything it needs. Outside the round window, the North Atlantic lies in long, low movement. The water is not a wall or a spectacle. It is a surface, breathing slowly under winter cloud. Sometimes the ship passes through a veil of mist and the window turns pale. Sometimes the mist thins and the sea returns with quiet lines running across it. You do not have to watch continuously. A sea day is made for looking and not looking. The curtain can remain half open. The lamp can stay off for a while, letting the room take its color from the water. The bed becomes a place to sit as well as rest. The blanket becomes a shawl or a folded weight across the knees, or simply a familiar shape at the foot of the mattress. The ferry's hum is the same, but daylight reveals more of the cabin's care. The clean join of the wall panels, the little hook behind the door, the tiny rail around the shelf, the towel folded with one edge tucked in. These details are not exciting. That is why they work. They give the mind small places to land, one at a time, while the ship keeps crossing the quiet winter water. The corridor in the sea day morning is still gentle. It has more light than it had at night, but none of it startles. The ceiling panels glow in a warm line. Door lamps rest above the cabin numbers. The carpet's muted pattern is easier to see now. Small wave shapes in grey, blue, and moss green peated. So softly they almost disappear underfoot. A narrow window at the end of the corridor shows water and cloud. No land, no hurry, just the ferries. Middle day, you walk without needing a destination. A ship at sea gives permission for this kind of walking, where each corridor leads to another. Warm interior, and every turn returns you eventually to the room with the round window. A service cart stands tucked neatly into an alcove. On it are folded cloths, a stack of fresh cups, and a small vase held in place by a wooden ring. The vase contains one piece of dried grass, pale and feathery. It moves only when the ferry's ventilation stirs. The cart is not in use. It is simply prepared. That word keeps returning on the ship. Prepared, prepared, prepared. Prepared cups, prepared rail, prepared window, prepared quiet. The corridor hums around the word until it no longer needs saying. At the far end, the window grows larger as you approach, then turns the hall blue for a few steps. You can stand there, look out, and then turn back when the cabin begins to feel like the better place again. The cafeteria, after breakfast, is calmer than breakfast itself. The tables have been wiped. The chairs are pushed in, not perfectly, only enough. A few cups remain upside down near the counter, and a soft smell of toast lingers without becoming hunger. The serving lights are lower now, and the windows take most of the room's attention. Outside them, the winter sea moves in broad grey bands. Inside, the ferry holds a useful quiet. You choose a table by the window, perhaps the same table you saw in Thnight tonight, though it is hard to know. Daylight changes rooms. The tabletop shows a fine grain beneath the laminate. The cup in your hands is warm, but not hot. The steam is thin, almost invisible against the window. There are no conversations to follow, no schedule to interpret, no menu to choose, just the resting room after its busy hour has passed. At the far counter, stacks of plates stand behind glass. They look like pale moons, one behind another. A row of small spoons catches light in a muted line. A cloth hangs folded over a rail, drying slowly in the warm interior air. The ferry moves beneath the floor with the same even note it kept through the night. This is another kind of cabin, in a way. A public cabin, emptied and softened, carrying cups and tables instead of a bed. You sit long enough for the cup to cool, then longer perhaps. The saps, the sea outside keeps its low movement. The room inside keeps its mild warmth. Nothing needs to happen between them. Near the lounge, there is a small reading corner. It is not a library, not really. Just 2 shelves, a low lamp, 3 deep chairs, and a basket of blankets under the window. The books on the shelves are turned, so their spines are softened by shade. Some titles might be readable if you leaned close, but there is no need. At this hour, the books are more useful as quiet rectangles, stacked with their own patient weight. A small table holds a wooden bookmark, notebook. No one has written in it, or perhaps someone has. On pages you do not need to open, the chair nearest the window has a blanket folded over one arm. It is thicker than the cabin blanket, cream-colored with a blue stitched border. When you sit, the chair gathers around your shoulders without trapping you. The lamp gives enough light to make the shelf edges warm. Outside, sea and cloud move together. Inside, the room offers the feeling of reading without requiring the act of reading. Some objects are restful because they remind the mind of attention, then ask for none. Book, bookmark, blanket, window, lamper, the order can repeat and soften. You may rest a hand on the closed notebook. The cover is smooth. The ferry hum travels faintly through the table leg. A page inside the nearest book settles with a sound almost too small to be a sound. The reading corner keeps its quiet, and the sea day passes behind the glass. A simple map rests under glass on a small hallway table. It shows the North Atlantic in faded blues and pale greens. Denmark low on one side, the Faroe Islands held like small marks ahead. The line between them is not sharp. It curves gently, more like a thread laid down for the eye than an instruction for the mind. You do not need to study it. The map is only a quiet object in the ship. Another face, Kanaet, another surface catching lamplight. Hirtshals is already behind the ferry. Torshavn is still ahead. Between them is enough blue to make the cabin feel useful, as ease. Enough distance to let time loosen, enough open water for the ship's hum to become the main clock of the day. A small brass weight rests on one corner of the glass, another rests on the opposite corner. They keep the map flat. Though the glass would have done that by itself. Sometimes, care adds one more small care, simply because it can. Your hand stays beside the map, not on it. No route needs tracing. The ferry already knows. Beyond the table, the corridor turns toward the lounge. Behind you, the cafeteria holds its cups. Below, your cabin holds its bed. All these places become part of the same soft crossing. Rooms arranged around water, Water arranged around water. Water arranged around time. The map remains on the table when you leave it. Its blue line remains under glass. Its islands remain small and quiet. And the real ferry continues through the real day, without asking you to keep track of it. In the hallway near the map, the night keeper pauses only long enough to gather the key. The brass has warmed from the cabin table. The leather cord slips softly through the fingers before returning to a pocket where it makes no sound. It is not a signal, and not a secret. It is the ferry cabin's small threshold, carried gently while the room waits unlocked in memory. The hallway lamp above the map gives the brass one brief amber edge. Then the edge is gone. The story moves on without ceremony. There is a quiet pleasure in knowing that doors on this ship are ordinary doors. They open. They close. They hold warmth. They give privacy. They matter without drama. You continue along the corridor, past a row of windows, now pale with sea day. The map table recedes behind you. The lounge opens ahead with its deep chairs and softened glass. Farther along, another alcove holds a drinking fountain, a stack of napkins, and a small bowl where wrapped sugar cubes rest, like tiny white stones. Everything is useful. Everything is mild. Even the objects that could be overlooked seem to have been chosen for quiet hands and slow hours. Rounded handles, low lamps, cloth rather than shine, wood rather than glare. The ferry continues through the long middle of the crossing. Hirtshals has become a word behind the ship. Torshavn remains a word ahead. Between them, the rooms do their unhurried work, and the listener can drift from one to the next without needing to arrive anywhere yet. Afternoon on the ferry is muted and slow. There is no bright edge to it. The light over the water thickens, then thins, then settles into a grey that makes every interior lamp seem warmer. In the lounge, one or two chairs have been turned slightly toward the windows, as if the room itself prefers to watch the sea without making a subject of it. You sit with a blanket across your knees. The fabric is cream, with a blue stitched edge, and the stitching becomes a small path for the eyes to follow when the sea outside is too broad. Over and under, the thread moves along the border, simple and patient. The ferry's motion is barely there. A cup on the table stays still. A hanging lamp moves so little it might only be remembering motion. Across the room, the bookshelf and game shelf rest in the afternoon dimness. The closed boxes look calm. The old magazines lean against one another. A plant in a small fixed pot holds glossy leaves that do not tremble. Outside, a low bank of cloud makes the horizon disappear for a while. This does not make the ship feel lost. It only makes the world simpler. Window, cloud, water, chair, blanket, lamp, hand, thread, warmth. The afternoon needs no chapters. It can be a wide, soft middle, the kind of time that belongs especially to ferries, trains, and quiet rooms where the destination is real, but not yet relevant. You let the blanket stay heavy enough, the water distant enough, and the day moves gently onward. A small laundry room sits behind an open door, near the lower corridor. It is not a place you need to use. It is simply warm as you pass, and the warmth is pleasant enough to notice. Two machines rest against the wall quiet now. A shelf above them holds folded towels in soft stacks. A basket sits on the counter with a cloth folded over its rim. The room smells faintly of clean cotton and warm metal. A single lamp under the shelf turns the towels cream and grey and pale blue. One towel has a green thread at the edge, almost the same color as the thread in the cabin blanket. Such small repetitions can make a place feel whole without explaining why. On the wall is a hook with a wooden handle brush. Beside it hangs a little cloth bag of pins. The bag is tied with a cord and rests flat against the paneling. There is a sink with a rounded faucet and a bar of plain soap on a small dish. Nothing in the room is decorative. Everything is cared for. That is enough. You stand at the threshold, not entering, only receiving the warmth for a moment. The ferry hum is deeper here, perhaps because the room is lower, perhaps because the walls are closer. The sound blends with the idea of folded towels, warm cloth, quiet machines, and practical kindness. Then you continue on. The laundry room remains behind you. The laundry room remains behind you, holding its clean stacks and mild heat. It is good that some rooms can soften the story without needing to become part of it. By late afternoon, the cabin feels newly familiar. The room is the same, but every return has added a layer to it. The first return after departure made it private. The night return made it safe. The sea day return makes it almost known by touch. Door handle, small step in, bed to the left, nightstand near the lamp, round window ahead. Outside, the window, mist has gathered. The sea is still there, but softened into pale movement behind the glass. Sometimes a darker fold passes through the mist and becomes water again. Sometimes the whole circle turns silver grey, and the ferry seems to be crossing. Not an ocean, but a quiet cloud laid low across the world. The lamp is on again. Its amber light meets the grey from the window and gives the cabin a middle color, neither day nor night. The blanket lies over the bed now, opened and refolded, no longer as exact as it was when you arrived. The room has accepted your small changes. A cup rests on the tray. A towel hangs neatly on the hook. The paper ticket is tucked under the lamp base. These details make the cabin less like a room as to someone, and more like a small place that has agreed to hold the crossing. You may sit beside the window. The glass remains cool. The bed remains warm. Between cool glass and warm bed, the afternoon loses its edges. The ferry keeps moving through mist, and the cabin keeps returning you to rest. The long middle of the crossing becomes evening without a clear border. One moment, the window is grey. Later, it is blue-grey. Later still, the blue deepens until the lamp seems to carry more of the room. The ferry does not announce the change. It lets the lights take over, gradually. One corridor lamp, one lounge lamp, one cabin lamp at a time. In the hallway, the day recedes into warm reflections. The brass handrail glows again. The carpet darkens. The windows become mirrors with water behind them. You can walk once more through the ship if you like, not to explore, because there is little left to discover, but to let familiar places soften in their evening form. The reading corner becomes a pool of lamplight. The cafeteria becomes stacked cups and a quiet counter. The lounge becomes chairs facing dark glass. The map under glass becomes a blue shape beneath amber reflections. Every room is the same room and not the same room. That is how evening works. It gives ordinary things a second gentleness. Back at the cabin door, the small lamp above the frame is already warm. The door opens into the same bed, the same blanket, the same round window, now holding nearly the same color it held the night before. The crossing has made a loop without ending. Night returns, not as repetition, but as deeper permission. The ferry has been carrying you long enough now that being carried no longer needs noticing. The room is ready for the second night. The second night in the cabin is quieter than the first. Not because the ferry is more silent. The hum is the same. The water is the same. The low practical sounds of the ship continue in their usual places. It is quieter because the room has become known, and known places ask less of the mind. The lamp can be lower now. The lamp can be lower now. The blanket can be drawn up without looking. The cup can be found by the hand on the nightstand. The round window can remain mostly covered, with only a small arc of dark blue showing near the curtain edge. You have learned the room's little geography: bed to table, table to shelf, shelf to hook, hook to door, door back to bed. The cabin is not large, and that is its gift. The ferry moves through another stretch of winter water. Somewhere beyond the dock, the Faroe Islands wait, but they wait without pulling on the night. Their lights are still far enough to belong to tomorrow's softness. Tonight belongs to the cabin, the blanket, the lamp, and the slow breath of the ship. You may let the day fold away. Lounge chair, cafeteria cup, mam table, laundry warmth, window mist. All of it can become one softened memory inside the room. The second night needs no new path. Only the same safe things, understood more easily. The ferry carries the cabin carries the bed carries the quiet. At this deeper hour, the cabin has tiny sounds. Not noises that ask for attention, just the small speech of a room at sea. A soft tick in the wall, a breath from the vent, a faint settling from the shelf. The slow pressure of water far outside, made harmless by layers of steel, warmth, glass, curtain, and blanket. You do not need to name any of it. The room is allowed to have its small sounds. A house has them. An inn has them. A train has them. A ferry cabin has them too. Especially on a winter crossing. Especially in the middle of the night, when everything useful is quiet enough to be heard in fragments. The sounds repeat, but not in a pattern strict enough to follow. Hum. Breathe dottikik, soft water. Hum again. The mind can listen, and then stop listening. The lamp is a small amber shape behind your eyelids, if your eyes close. The window is a small blue shape beyond the curtain. The blanket has a soft weight on the feet, then the knees, then the hands, depending on where attention rests. A tiny sound in the wall comes and goes. The ferry continues. Another sound answers it from somewhere below, then settles. All these sounds are the opposite of urgency. A working vessel, warm rooms, closed doors, steady systems, and a long crossing held by ordinary care. You can let them become as soft as rain, remembered from indoors. Though outside there is only winter sea and mist. Hum, breath, dottik, blanket, blue, and then less than words. Later, the key rests near the round window for a little while. It was set there without ceremony, beside the curtain cord, where the lamp reaches it only faintly. The brass is mostly shadow now. The leather cord lies dark against the pale window ledge. Behind it, the glass holds a soft blue so deep it seems almost black. It has opened the door it needed to open. Now it belongs to the room's quiet inventory. Cup, blanket, pencil, towel, curtain, cord, lamp. Outside the window, the ferry continues through the second night. No land shows yet. No harbour lights ask to be counted. The ship has entered the long dark portion before arrival, when even the idea of arriving grows sleepy and far away. You do not need to look at it for long. You only notice it there, small and warm even in shadow, and then the room takes it back into the general softness. The curtain hangs still, the ledge is narrow, the glass is cool, the lamp is lower than before. Oh, the blanket has a folded ridge near the foot of the bed. The ferry hum passes through, all of it equally, as if every object is resting on the same deep note. Soon it will be gathered again. Soon it be gathered again. Soon the window will begin to change color. And soon, though not too soon, the islands will appear as softened lights in mist. For now, nothing has to move. It waits. The room waits. The sea goes on quietly beyond the glass. The deepest part of the second night may turn the crossing into something almost dreamlike. The sea is no longer a place outside. It becomes a color behind the curtain. The ferry is no longer a large ship with decks and corridors. It becomes the steady hum beneath the bed. The cabin no longer needs description. It becomes a few warm points held together by sleep. Lamp, blanket, window, pillow, cup, hum. The mind can pass over them, slowly or not at all. Perhaps the lounge is still there, with its chairs facing dark glass. Perhaps the cafeteria is still there, with cups in quiet stacks. Perhaps the covered deck is still holding its rail under mist. Perhaps the map remains under glass, its blue line resting between Hirtshals and Torshavn. All of that can be true without needing attention. The ferry knows its way. The water knows how to move aside. The water knows how to move aside. The cabin knows how to keep a small warm square in the middle of the dark. Dreams, if they come, can be made of simple ferry things. A handrail that leads to a softer room, a cup that never needs refilling, a window that opens onto blue without cold, a blanket that folds itself at the edge of the bed. Nothing must be explained. Nothing must be finished. The crossing continues through the part of night where names grow less important. Hirtshals behind, Torshavn ahead, but here only the cabin, only the warm square of the lamp, only the sea turned into sound. Long before the islands are clearly visible, the mist changes. The window does not show land at first. It shows a different kind of darkness, layered and soft, as if the night ahead has gained depth. The ferry's movement remains steady. The cabin remains warm, yet something in the blue, beyond the glass, has begun to gather. You do not need to sit up. The window can hold the change on its own. Mist comes and goes across the round glass. Sometimes it is pale enough to turn the window silver. Sometimes it thins and leaves only dark sea. Sometimes it makes a small halo around the ferry's own lights, and the halo seems to float for a while beside the ship, before dissolving. The lamp inside is lower now, almost morning low. The blanket is familiar against your hands. The cup is empty, the shelf is still. The room has carried you through the long middle of the crossing and is now carrying you toward its soft edge. Arrival does not have to mean waking. Not here. Not yet. The story can approach the islands the way mist approaches glass. Slowly, without a knock, without a task, without asking the body to prepare. Somewhere ahead, Torshavn holds harbour lights behind the weather. Somewhere beyond that, hills rise and roofs gather in the dark. But the cabin only gives you the first Faroe mist, a change in blue, a softening in the window, and the ferry's same patient hum beneath the bed. The first harbour lights appear as if they are part of the mist. One small amber point rests inside the blue. Then another, lower and softer. Then a faint line that might be shore, or might only be reflection. The round window holds them carefully, not too many at once, so the arrival remains gentle. These lights do not pull you from the bed. They do not ask you to pack or stand or remember where anything is. They are only lights far ahead, softened by Faroe weather and ferry glass. The cabin stays warm around them. The lamp inside is very low now, almost unnecessary, but still kind. The blanket has kept its heat. The nightstand holds its cup, its paper ticket, and the quiet space where the little brass shape rested earlier. The curtain is drawn back just enough to show the approaching harbour, without turning the whole room into morning. The ferry's hum changes slightly. Perhaps because the water has changed. Perhaps because the ship is nearing sheltered soundings. The change is subtle enough to become part of the same lullaby. Outside, the lights grow clearer, then softer again as mist crosses them. A hill shape gathers behind them. A few more amber dots appear. Torshavn is near, but near does not have to mean immediate. The crossing is allowed to complete itself slowly. You can remain where you are, under the blanket, watching or not watching, while the Faroe harbour lights come forward in the window like a dream, remembering how to be a place. The islands arrive first as shapes, not facts. A dark hillside, a softened roofline, a low shoulder of land behind mist. The window does not label them, and the story does not need to either. It is enough that the long water has led to land, and the land has chosen to appear gently. The Faroe Islands sit in the North Atlantic, but tonight they enter the cabin only as quiet silhouettes and amber lights. No guidebook voice follows them. No list of places begins. The ferry has done the traveling. The cabin has done the holding. The islands can simply be there. You see one slope fade into cloud. Another slope appears behind it. A line of harbour lamps curves along the water, each lamp blurred into a small warm oval by the window glass. Somewhere, hidden by mist, the town gathers around the harbour. But from here it remains soft and low. The bed is still the nearest place. The blanket is still the nearest warmth. The lamp is still the nearest warmth. The lamp is still the nearest light. The islands are only the far edge of the room's blue circle. This keeps the arrival from becoming too bright. The mind can register completion without turning it into action. The ferry approaches. The hills hold still. The harbour lights thicken by 1 or 2 points. Mist moves across them, not hiding them fully, only making sure they stay gentle. You may let the shapes blur. Land, water, window, blanket. The words can change places now. The crossing has nearly reached its harbour, and the cabin remains the place where it is safest to notice. The approach to Torshavn is slow enough to belong to sleep. The harbor lights no longer seem far away, but they are still softened by mist, water, and the round window. The ferry's motion changes from open sea steadiness to a quieter glide. The hum remains, only gathered inward, as if the ship is speaking more softly to itself near land. You do not need to know the order of arrival. No schedule enters the room. No instruction breaks the quiet. The cabin keeps its own time until the story is ready to close. Outside, the harbor water is darker than the open sea and smoother under the lights. Reflections stretch and shorten along the surface. A few buildings on the slope show warm windows, not many, just enough to suggest a town still half asleep. The hills behind them are deep blue and almost hidden. The ferry moves with care. Large things can be gentle when they are guided slowly. The room responds in small ways. A cup gives the faintest tremble. The curtain settles against the wall. The blanket shifts with the movement of your foot, and the lamp holds steady in its small circle. Torshavn can wait outside the glass. The crossing can finish without waking the whole story. The harbor lights are near now. The islands are near. The long route from Hirtshals has become a few warm points in a window, a low ship hum, and a bed that has remained kind through every hour of water. Before the door opens again, the cabin rests in a final stillness. It has been a small room through many kinds of time. Harbor night, first departure, deep sea darkness, blue morning, muted sea day, second evening, island mist, and soft approach. None of these required the room to change very much. That has been its comfort. The bed is no longer perfectly made, and that is better. The blanket has been unfolded, used, and folded loosely again. The cup has moved from tray to hand to table. The curtain has opened and closed by small amounts, never all at once. The window has held harbor, water, mist, sea day, second night, and now the lights of Torshavn. A place can become familiar by receiving small changes without complaint. The ferry is near its harbor, but the story does not follow the bright practical parts. It does not need the ramp, the terminal, the luggage, or the morning air in full detail. It stays where sleep is most likely to remain, inside the warm cabin, at the edge of arrival, before the door opens too wide. The night keeper stands quietly near the threshold. The corridor beyond is warm. The ship has nearly completed its crossing. The room has completed something softer. It has made a long distance. It has made a long distance feel like a series of gentle interiors. Bed, lamp, window, blanket, water, mist. Harbor lights. The door remains closed for one more quiet moment, and that moment is allowed to be enough. The cabin remains warm after the harbor has come near, that is.
The path to step to keep.
Not the end of a trip, not the beginning of another, not the business of arriving, only the warmth that stays in. The small room, while island lights gather outside the round window. The ferry may soon rest at its berth. The corridors may slowly brighten. Somewhere beyond the door, practical footsteps may begin in time. But here, the lamp is still low, the blanket still holds its heat, and the window is still blue at the edges with amber lights in its center. You can let the arrival remain outside. The story has brought the islands closer enough to be peaceful and left the rest unfinished. This is a good kind of ending for sleep. No final explanation. No bright morning. Only a quiet harbor waiting beyond glass while the room continues to care for you. The paper ticket is still under the lamp. The pencil is still on the shelf. The towel is still on the hook. The cup is still on the tray. Every small thing remains where a resting mind can leave it. The ferry has crossed winter water. The cabby's crossed winter the night. The cabin has crossed the night. The harbor lights have arrived without hurry. And the blanket, perhaps. What? The simplest object in the whole ship has done what it was placed there to do. It has held warmth. It has given weight. It has asked for nothing. The cabin remains warm. The window remains soft. The story remains open just enough for sleep to continue. The lantern stays low in the ferry cabin. The lantern stays low in the ferry cabin. The door stays warm in its blue-grey frame. The harbour lights of Torshavn remain softened in the round window, close enough to be known and distant enough to leave undisturbed. The blanket rests at the foot of the bed. The cup is quiet on the tray. The ship's hum settles into the harbour hush and becomes part of the room. I gather the brass key by its worn leather cord. It has opened what it needed to open tonight. Now the key returns to my pocket, where it rests without a sound. The cabin can stay warm a little longer. Now, the ferry can keep its low lights. The water can move softly along the hull, and the islands can remain beyond the glass, wrapped in mist and amber. You do not need to follow from anyone. You do not need to follow me to the corridor. The room has done in the morning. The room has done enough. The crossing has done enough. The night has kept its promise in small things. A lamp, a bed, a round window, a folded blanket, a cup, a quiet door, and a key that knew the way in. I will be here tomorrow night. Sleep well.